Happening today, there are two protests planned here locally. The first will be at KCK City Hall. It starts at 11:30 this morning. At 3 o'clock, a social justice march will be taking place. It's at the Oak Park Mall. We'll bring you any updates on any developments from these events. And local advocates want city leaders to consider allocating the funding of the Kansas City Police Department. KCTV5's Casey Jones has been digging into how much money the department is actually spending. She's live from the plaza. Casey, what did you learn from going through the numbers?
Well, I did learn that local advocates don't want to completely take away all the funding from the Kansas City Police Department. Instead, they'd like for city leaders to take a closer look at that funding and find other places in the city to redistribute some of that money places where there are needs. So we did look up exactly how much money the Kansas City Police Department spends. This year, they have a $225 million budget. Last year, the department spent $222 million. Roughly 90% of that budget was spent on things like personnel services, that's salaries and benefits, 6% on contractual services and settlements for claims. The rest was spent on equipment, uniforms, fuel, and more. This year's budget is up $3 million, but the breakdowns are similar. Advocates want City Council to consider funding the department based on performance and demonstrated need.
Locally, the conversation is actually about, I would call it funds based on outcomes, right? And funding based on where the need is the greatest. And so here's your 25% allocation, and after you meet this quarter's benchmarks, then you can get your next 25% allocation.
So I asked KCPD for a response on calls to reallocate KCPD funding. A spokesman for the department said in part, each year the department puts together their budget proposal to make the best use of the funds available to the city. That proposal is then submitted to City Council for approval. Of note, there are state statutes that dictate the funding to KCPD that the city is required to provide that is part of the nuance of, quote, state control of the agency. Now, the protest calling for city leaders to reallocate that funding is happening here at the Fountain on Saturday, starting at 6. You will hear from community organizers and city leaders as well. Reporting live from Kansas City, Casey Jones, KCTV5 News.
All right, Casey, thank you.